All right, so here today we're going to take a look at an interview with Voddie Baucham and Ben Shapiro. I don't know if you know who Voddie Baucham is. I have never heard of him until recently, and he kind of started showing up in my Facebook feed, different places on social media, usually presenting a strong word on a topic, like strong opinions, well-spoken, well thought out what he has to say, but very strong. And some things I appreciate about that, and some things I'm going, ooh, it's a little tough. But at any rate, it's interesting that he comes on the Ben Shapiro Sunday Special podcast, and I thought it'd be great to check into it, and specifically on the topic about what it means to be a man, okay, from a biblical perspective. And he's going to be giving his perspective. Ben's going to be asking him some questions. So let's just take a look at that today and see what he has to say.
Let's talk about that for a moment because, obviously we now live in a society that really disparages the value of fathers. Mothers too. I mean, the basic idea is that any family formation unit is totally equivalent, that you don't need a mother, you don't need a father, two fathers might do it, two mothers might do it, 7 people might do it, a society might do it.
It is fair to say that families do come in all kinds of different shapes and sizes. I mean, that's true, right? And to be in a family means that you're probably in a place with a little bit of a dysfunction. There's a measure of dysfunction in your family, no doubt. Every family it is. But the fact remains that mom and dad, mother and father in a home usually is one of the best predictors of future, success in life, to go on to get an education, to go on and do okay for yourselves. And not the only thing, but studies have shown time and time again that is one of the key contributing factors to having, success in life, having a mom and dad at home. And as true as it is, families do come in all different shapes and sizes and stuff like this. And everybody needs to be treated with respect, certainly. However, there is something a little different about this, something probably a little better, at least statistically speaking anyways, and biblically speaking.
But what the studies tend to show is that the best outcome, particularly for young men, is if they have a father in the home. If they don't have a father in the home, then a surrogate father nearby.
Right.
And why do you think society has moved so far, so fast away from this when it's so obvious?
Why?
I mean, it is perfectly obvious that the effect of not having male figures around is devastating for young men.
Because we're more moved by and committed to ideologies and narratives than we are to truth.
Ooh, we're more committed to ideologies and narratives than truth. AKA, we're more committed to a religious view that we don't even know that we have. A lot of people have a cultural ideology and understanding of how they think the world operates. They don't even know why they think that way. And they believe in it so strongly that even if presented with facts and truth about a certain issue, in this case, mothers and fathers being in the home, that they will disregard it anyways. And it's almost like a false religious view, okay? If your religion pushes aside truth and say, you know what, if you can't explain away this truth, then perhaps you're in a false religion. At least I think so anyways, because I think any truth is God's truth, and you should be able to see those things and respond to them correctly. So maybe it's a false religious system, this ideology and narrative and worldview that people have, which says, you know what, mothers and fathers aren't important.
Especially when you start talking about, social justice movement, critical theory, when you have as a foundational idea that people who are appealing to absolute truth are part of, this oppressive hegemonic power, that's one problem. But then when you also have this powerful narrative that men are unsafe, that the patriarchy is inherently oppressive, then that tends to override any evidence to the contrary.
Okay, so what he's talking about here is that a lot of the current cultural ideology of today has to do with oppressors and victims, those with power and those who don't have power. It's kind of a cultural Marxist thing. And so basically the idea is, listen, if you come from a family with mother and father at home, that's part of the patriarchy. That's part of the cultural power structure that has existed, for millennia, right? For thousands of years at this point. And so people are trying to, I'm sorry to say this, but they are literally trying to tear down those very things that have built up our society and our culture over thousands of years and saying, no, that's not good. And really what's behind it, I think it has to do with the fact that, people want to live their sinful lives without consequence. Just do you, right? Just do you. Look deep inwardly within, figure out your true self. Now live that out. But if you study the Bible, if you read the Bible for any length of time, you start to realize that is that's not God's way of doing things. You don't look within to discover yourself. You look to God to see what he has to say about yourself, and is all written in the scripture. And so a lot of this has to do with tearing down the very truths that has built up not just our society, but is really subscriptions that are laid out in scripture and by God himself for the flourishment of mankind and for the betterment of families.
So you talk about these studies that point to outcomes for young men. That just doesn't carry as much weight as the passionate feminist who sees the patriarchy as the root of all evil.
All right, so let's talk about manhood. It's a very peculiar moment for sort of what manhood means in society.
Yeah.
We've had
Yes, let's talk about manhood.
full-scale feminist assaults on what men are for. The answer for many feminists is nothing. Right? Like war, it's good for nothing. And then
Sometimes we're
you
good for
have
nothing.
a simultaneous sort of backlash that has come in the form of actual toxic masculinity, meaning men acting poorly, pointing out that men have sort of been robbed of their initiative, that men have been robbed, and all that's true. But then the reaction is, okay, so the more muscular I act, without actually taking on responsibility, the more I'm a man.
Right.
And so you're seeing the sort of manosphere online, which has picked up a lot of steam.
Hypermasculinity.
Hypermasculinity.
Yeah.
And what I've said about it is
Strength without responsibility. That is certainly not a good recipe for a healthy society. Part of manhood, I guess what he's alluding to, we'll see how Voddie responds, is taking on responsibility. Very, very key thing, all right? Are you truly living out manhood, if you would, okay, without taking on responsibility in your life for the people around you, for your family, for your children, for your neighborhood? That's part of what I'm assuming he's alluding to, and I think is true, what actual manhood is about.
is that they're getting a lot of the diagnosis right, and they're getting a lot of the prescription wrong.
Yeah.
They're correctly pointing out that men have lost their way. They're correctly pointing out that men have been feminized, that a lot of what men were supposed to do has been taken away from them.
True.
But their answer is not to sort of restore traditional manhood.
Right.
Their answer is to almost take advantage of the failures of the system. So be as promiscuous as you want, nail as many chicks as you want. Go
Oh,
out
boy.
there and experience life, and never settle down, never have kids, never take on obligation. Because
Yes.
after
True,
all,
that's what
the
it
world wants
is.
of you. Now, what do you make of the state of men right now? Because it is true that across the country, men are in crisis. I mean, they're not going to school as much as women. They're not in the workforce as much.
Oh, what's this? Among 25 to 34-year-olds, women are more likely to have a tertiary degree than men in all 38 countries that are members of the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. Wait, let me say it again. Okay, sure.
As women anymore, they're not getting married.
I guess
they're
that's
into
different than the way it
pornography. I mean,
used
these
to
are
be.
serious crises.
Yeah, and part of that is, when you take manhood and try to look at manhood in isolation, you've already got a problem. The God who created us, he created us male and female, and so you cannot understand maleness apart from femaleness, right? You have to
Interesting.
understand what it means
It's
to be a
true.
man, first of all, by what it means to be made in the image of God, and second of all, by what it means to be made as this counterpart to a woman. And this idea that God created us to be priest, and prophet, and provider, and protector.
Ooh, I like that.
God does,
Priest, prophet, provider, and protector. That's what God has made men to be in society and in our families, in our homes, in our neighborhoods. Ooh, I like it. Preach.
designed us that way. And when you take us away from that, like, we're bigger than women, we're stronger than women, we have all of these things that
Sorry,
allow
ladies,
us
it's true.
to take advantage of women. They get pregnant, we don't. We can just walk away from it and, leave them with that. There are so many things that if left unchecked, they do allow for this toxic version of masculinity. And so what we have to call men back to
Responsibility.
is this understanding of manhood that is outside of themselves.
That's what responsibility is. It's outside of yourself, right? It's putting other people's needs, wants, above your own. That's responsibility. And that is, I would suggest, a key factor in actually moving people forward in their lives. Dr. Jordan Peterson actually talks a lot about this. I believe in one of his books, certainly in his lectures, about responsibility is often the key factor to your future. Meaning that you're not going to get ahead in life unless you take on certain responsibilities, whether it's in your workplace, or in your family, or in your neighborhood, your society, whatever. A key factor to your future. And outside of that, that's what leads he's suggesting, Voddie here, to a toxic masculinity, because we have more strength. We have, we're large. There's certain advantages, if you would, I guess, to being a man, all right? But if you strip away the responsibilities, boy, that's not a good recipe.
And you being a man is not just about who you think you are or even who you want to be.
That's true.
It is about you pointing back to the
nudity.
one who made you. It's about you pointing back to the purpose for which he made you. And it's about you pointing back to the relationship that he intends for you to have with the opposite sex. And one of the things you mentioned is men not wanting to be married. That's an incredibly important part of the picture of what it means
Talk
to
about
be
that
a
in
man.
another video.
This
Marriage
idea
is
that
very
we would
important in
be
society.
in a relationship, that we would be the head of a household, that we would be, like I said, priest, prophet, provider, protector within that context. All of that gives us not only purpose, but it gives us greater understanding of what masculinity is all about. And it also keeps it in check, and it protects women. That's the irony of all of this. People are fighting against the patriarchy.
What he's saying, it's actually better for women if men assume and take on the responsibilities that God has laid out for mankind, and that, again, culture is trying to strip away, but it's actually to the detriment of women, all right? We need to understand that. So, very important.
People are fighting against marriage. People are fighting against traditional roles. And the result is you leave women unprotected and you leave men unchecked to do whatever they will with those women.
So,
yeah.
Let's say that you've talked to many, many young men, obviously, across the nation. And let's say that you're faced with a young man who's been brought up in a family without a father, just by a mom, somebody like you when you were young. And that person is saying, listen, I've had a rough life. I haven't been able to get ahead. My opportunities are limited. And now you're asking me to take on all of these burdens. Make me the case that I should take on these burdens.
Yeah, first of all, that's what you were created to do, right? Secondly, it's what you yearn to do. Like, if a man is honest, men don't yearn to just sit in their mother's basement and play video games. In fact, when we sit in the basement and play video games, we like to play those kind of video games that simulate, the actions and activities of masculinity,
right? That's
right?
true.
And so that's the first thing I want to say to him. You were made for more than this. There's a God who created the world and a God who created you. And so I want you to come back to that. The second thing that I want to say is that, don't buy the lie that says you have to have it all figured out before you can begin to exercise any kind of manhood. Nothing could be further from the truth, right?
Ooh, that's good. When it comes to taking on responsibility, don't make the mistake that you need to have it all together. Put it all together. You got all your ducks in a row. You know what you're doing. You're financially stable before you start taking on responsibility. Very key point. A lot of people think about this when it comes to maybe getting married. Well, I got to have a job making $100K a year or something. I got to make sure that I don't have debt. I got to make sure I've got to purchase a house. It's not the case with children. Are you ever ready to have children? I don't think so. I don't think anybody, when they start having children, are ever fully ready for the challenge and the responsibility that comes. But you know what? You got to do it. That's God's design for mankind.
I don't have it all figured out. You don't have it all figured out. But this process, even this process of growing as a man, is part of what God has put in place for us to figure it out, right? The other thing that I would say is you're not called to do this by yourself. The Bible says, like iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. We need each other. We need other men. We need other men in our lives to mentor us, to disciple us. We need men when we're younger, to corral us, to check us. We need that. So those are some of the things that I would want to talk to a young man about, and ultimately to point them, again, to the God who made them, and to point.
All right, we're going to stop right there. I agree on this last part wholeheartedly. I'm so thankful today for all of the godly men that have been in my life over the years that has helped mentor me, shape me. If you're watching this and you don't have a father figure that is those things that you need to be in your life, you know what? Find other godly mentors, leaders, people that you can lean on, okay? People you can lean on in your life to bring you wisdom, perspective, to correct you when you need correcting. Again, I'm so thankful for those people in my life. It's really helped shape me to who I am today. And I'm still a work in progress. I don't have all my ducks in a row, but I'm on this journey that God has called me on. So anyways, God bless you today. Thanks for tuning into this. We'll hopefully see you in the next video. Like and subscribe for more content, and we'll catch you later. Bye-bye.